Hello, everyone. This is Amy from Humility and Doxology, and I have a minute between the gym and cleaning and checking some schoolwork and our afternoon appointments. So I wanted to come on as promised earlier this week and give you a tiny peek into our middle school curriculum for this homeschool year. I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader are my two oldest children, and I've previously done a looking curriculum for my younger children, our 1st and 3rd grader, but now is the time to talk about some of our fun plans for this year for our older children. That's sort of a big topic. I'm going to try to keep this brief. There are some things, in particular logic. I know I had asked a question to see if there was anything you specifically wanted to hear more about, and I heard logic and independent learning and accountability and checking in to make sure work is being done and done well. So I want to make sure I hit on those points, but I know for a fact things like logic, I have so many thoughts about that it deserves an entire post or maybe even a live on its own. But I can at least give a brief overview today. And if you have any questions or want to hear more details on some specifics, definitely let me know, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Okay, so without further ado, you guys know that we as a family begin our day with morning time, and I've dropped a link to our morning time plans for this year. And that's something that all of the children do together with me in the morning, including the older two. But then things begin to disperse and people go their own directions. So for my 6th grader, she is using Matthew C for her Algebra 1 this year. I've been very pleased with this so far. We had not been pleased with the algebra curriculum we had used with my son many years ago. And I think for my daughter, Matthew C is a good curriculum, a good fit for her this year. She had done Saxon up until this year. She can work to mastery. It's very concrete and hands-on. Since she is young, she's 6th grade, but ready for algebra, I wanted to make sure that we did it in a gentle way and in a way that still helped her understand algebra as something concrete. So there have definitely been some tears this year, not because it's too hard for her, but because she really wants to do it well and she's motivated to progress. And so I'm having to encourage her to slow down and to take the time to go over the problems and check for careless errors, learn those good skills of showing the steps of your work so you can see where you made your careless error and things like that. But she's doing really well, and I'm very pleased with that program for her math this year. For her writing, she is continuing on with the next book in the Classical Academic Press Writing and Rhetoric series. She's done several in this series. I believe she started with, I think, book 4. In previous years, we did 1 book a semester. This year, I actually have decided to take the whole year to go more slowly through this book. One of the reasons is because I want to be able to include some free writing and other writing assignments for Emma, and I didn't want us to feel the pressure of trying to do too many assignments, nor to feel like we were getting behind if we chose to do something else. So in order to give us that freedom and make sure we're really doing the work well, that there's time for revision, there's time for discussion, I decided to take an entire year to do 1 book. So this is following the classical progymnasmata. I always get tongue-tied over that word. There's a lot of playing with words. There's a lot of imitation. This particular book is going to be focused on one step in that tradition, which is encomium and vituperation, so learning to praise or critique. I have loved this curriculum, and it's been a really good fit this year for our 6th grader. For her Latin, we are also using another classical academic press publication. She's doing Latin for Children, C. We actually began this book last year. She had done Latin for Children A and B in, what would that be? I guess 3rd and 4th grade. So in 5th grade, thought she's ready for Latin C. She had done well in A and B. But it very quickly became apparent last fall that she just wasn't quite ready yet. So we took all of the fall, not off from Latin, but off from a new book. Classical Academic Press has amazing resources on their website with extra free worksheets and blank forms for declining, conjugating, things like this. So she took that whole fall semester. We did lots of translation work and review of the grammar and review of the vocabulary. So by the time it got to the spring semester, she was ready to revisit Latin for Children C. And so at the end of the semester, we stopped where she was and have just picked it back up this year. So it's really important to me that we do faithful, consistent practice and that we really understand a topic or understand a subject, not that we necessarily get through a certain number of pages. And that's one of my favorite things about homeschooling, is that freedom that we have to truly learn and understand and not measure up to some artificial, like you have to be by chapter 2 by this certain day or whatever. A goal for her is going to be to finish this book and move on to the next book, which would be Latin Alive 1, hopefully by the spring. But again, if we hit some hiccups, I'm fine with taking a step back and just doing more review to make sure she's ready for that next step, and then to go as slowly as we need to for her, because she is still very young. If we do begin Latin Alive and things are coming together well for her, my goal is for her to take the introductory Latin level of the National Latin exam. My old one took intro to Latin, the Latin 1, and then last year he did the Latin 2 exam with the National Latin exam. It's a great program. I've put a link to their website here. See if you can find a local group that is administrating that test. They're not too challenging, but they are a good way to see how you're where you are in your Latin studies and to be able to accomplish something. And then if you get certain scores, you can like win awards and medals. Son got a medal last year. It was all exciting. So that's something to look into if you are doing Latin with your junior high school kids. So highly recommend the CAP Latin program. They also have video lectures, all sorts of great resources if you're not comfortable teaching Latin, or if you, like me, just need a little extra help because you have so many subjects and people you're trying to teach. For her logic. Okay, so I'm going to touch on this a little bit. Logic is one of my favorite subjects. It was one of my own favorite classes I took as a homeschooled junior high student, and I had so much fun a couple years ago teaching logic to my son and a few of his friends, just sort of facilitating that class, and it was wonderful. Unfortunately, this year my daughter didn't have any local friends who were up for logic this year with us, so we're having to do it on our own, and frankly it's not quite as much fun, but it's still, we're going to make it work, and it's still fun. We actually are using another classical academic press. I mean, they don't pay me, but I just love their stuff. It's The Art of Argument, and it's an entire course focused on the informal logic, so informal fallacies, and it is a great, fun introduction. It gives like silly examples. So here's a false dilemma, the either or fallacy bifurcation, and they give really silly examples. I will, and I am going to take, again, a whole year on this. She's only in 6th grade. I did it in 6th grade with my son, and then we'll move on and do formal logic, which is more syllogisms, analyzing the forms of an argument. We'll take a whole year to do that. Highly recommend the informal logic from Classical Academic Press. We did use their formal logic program last year with my son, and it went well, I think, especially because I felt very comfortable and confident with the material. I think that it would have been better if we had had more people to do it with us. It was not as much fun, again, to do it on our own. But I did like their formal logic, but I would like to also give a shout out to the logic program by Jim Nance, which is actually what I was taught with, an early edition. I don't have the new edition, I don't own it, but it's an excellent curriculum, and very approachable, and the informal and formal logic, at least how it used to be, is more woven together. Which is one of the reasons why I chose to do it this way with the art of argument. But I would recommend either program highly. Very thorough, very wonderful. And I will talk more about some of my philosophy of logic and how I, as a teacher, approach teaching logic and some of the things I bring in as supplemental resources at a future time. Let's see, let me look here. So with spelling, I have never done a spelling program with my other children. They haven't necessarily needed it, but my 6th grader needed a different approach to spelling. And so we have actually, starting last year, a friend graciously handed down to us They're All About Spelling program. And we just started all the way at the very beginning so that we didn't miss anything. And we've been going through that with Emma, and it's been so helpful. If you have someone who is a struggling speller, a struggling reader, has any issues related to processing words, I would highly recommend looking into the All About Spelling, or I haven't used All About Reading, but I've heard great things about it as well. And I wanted to show you something that's been a lifesaver, which is the app that we have been using that's made doing her spelling lessons so much easier. Instead of having the little magnet tiles that we were always having to keep high away from the 2-year-old, 3-year-old, we can just do all the work that's right here. You just manipulate the tiles and can easily clear the app. So highly recommend it. It was worth every penny. For her history, we are doing read aloud, read independently, reading journal. I've talked about that elsewhere, and I've dropped links to that in the description of this video, and same with science. I've talked about that before, but you can click on those links to see a little bit more about how we're approaching science and history. I'm teaching both children piano, so we have lesson time. We're supposed to be doing that weekly. That doesn't always happen, but they do have daily practice. And she's also involved in a homeschool choir and works a couple hours a week as a mother's helper for a local family. So I think that pretty much sums up her work. She has a weekly checklist that I showed an example of in my planning video and in my planning post. So you can see a little bit more about how we assign things. I do a big picture, I do a weekly assignment list that she then can work through the week at her own pace. Okay, moving on to the 8th grader. Caveat, he is doing things that may be surprising to you in some ways. So, and really for both of them, these are not things that I say, this is, you know, best and ideal for 6th grade. This is ideal for 8th grade. This is just where these particular children are and what is a good fit for them. So my son actually has already finished Algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2. And so we were looking into pre-calculus for this year. And I had highly recommended the Larson and Hostetler pre-calc by a local friend who is gifted at math and whose husband is gifted at math. So I actually bought this, it's an older edition, so that was cheaper on Amazon when I bought it. And I was also able to buy the solution guide so that I don't have to figure it all out on my own. That helps me. This has been probably the one area that's been a little bit different from my expectations for the year, mainly just because up until now, I have barely needed to be an assistant for my son. He has learned the math on his own independently. Maybe once a week he would have a question. And this year, he actually needs help, which is great. That's what I'm here for. That's my job. But I hadn't planned that in my own time schedule for the week. So that's not caused problems. That's just been an adjustment for me and my expectations. The publisher actually has a wonderful website with free videos and other resources, although he hasn't felt the need right now to use too many of those. But actually, if you've ever looked into chalk dust, the man who does the chalk dust videos is actually the man who's recorded the little tutorials that are free on the publisher's website. And I put that link below in the description. So that is what we're doing for math. Now, if you ever have had an academically gifted child, you will probably recognize or relate to what I'm about to say. And if you are a young parent who is suspecting that you might have a child who's academically gifted, or you're noticing those tendencies, I hope you can learn from my mistakes. So, academically gifted children often develop asynchronously. So their emotional and social maturity, for example, is often not as advanced as their academic abilities. And one of the things that is so important, and I have learned the hard way, but I'm trying to be better about, is just because your child is academically capable of doing work at a certain level does not mean that they also have that same corresponding, age that you would expect of ability to focus, for example. So in years past, I had a fifth grader doing algebra, and I needed to just expect him to have a fifth grader's attention span. And if that means we move more slowly through a curriculum, that's fine with me. So I really, again, am not in any rush, and I want him to understand and still love math. Assign an amount of time a day for him to work on math, like about an hour, at least an hour, maybe a little more, but not more than like 70 minutes. So around an hour of math, I want to see him working every day consistently through it. Some days, it's taken that whole amount of time for us to just work some problems together. So it's not like he's done a huge amount of problems, but we've had that consistent practice every day. And I've told him, like, if it takes him a year and a half, 2 years to work through this book, that's fine with me. I don't think it will, because he's doing really well. But I don't want to overburden him as a young person who's only 13 with too high of expectations, how much time, how much work to do. I want his workload to be appropriate to his age, or even sometimes a little less, to combat or balance out, I guess, the academic giftedness. The other thing I would say, and this sort of goes back to my daughter who was advancing so quickly through her Latin and had been doing so well, when you have a gifted child who's moved rapidly through a subject, it can be easy to assume that they're always going to move at that same pace. And so if all of a sudden something stalls or they seem to be getting slower, because you've always seen them go quickly, it can be easy sometimes to assume the worst of them and think, oh, they're just being lazy, or I know you can do it, you've been doing fine, look how quickly and advanced you've been, like, why are you slowing down? And it's really important to remember that's natural and normal. And if you get to a glitch, stop. Like, I love what Julie Bogart says, like, when the tears start, The learning stops. No one is benefited when you keep trying to push past those hard moments. So when you have, and I guess this is true even for more average or regular routine schedule, I'm not sure what the right word is, of academic child, don't expect learning to always happen at the same pace. Listen to your children, slow down when they need to slow down, and be willing to speed up when they need to speed up. But don't expect things to always be consistent. So that was a lot, but that's sort of how we've approached math this year for him. And he's doing great. And it's been fun. I've been stretched having to go back and figure out that pre-geometry a while since I had to use. So it's kind of fun for me too. Okay, moving on. This was supposed to be short and I just get wordy. For humanities, that would be moral philosophy, literature, history, philosophy, worldview, art, all these things, sort of seeing how they're a unified whole. We're using an older edition, a Giles Kirk curriculum, which is now Kings Meadow. I've put a link to the current curriculum. I happen to have an older version, again, the benefits of having been homeschooled myself. And so it was something that was one of the most impactful parts of my high school. And my son has been listening to those lectures, assigned reading, daily reading journal, opportunities to show what he's learned, little quizzes, and exams and things like that. And I highly recommend looking into Dr. George Grant's program if you are considering what to do for history in high school. But again, this is where academically he's ready for that. He can think about these big ideas. He's doing really well. But because he is younger, I have adjusted some of the expectations for him accordingly. So the curriculum is my tool. I'm in charge of it. The curriculum is not in charge of me. That is super important. For, let's see. He also is doing a video conference every other week with his grandfather, going over personal finance, stock, various things that I'm happy to let them do on their own. He's learning how to read stock reports, reading iPencil this last week, and I love modern technology. They can get on and have a video call and discuss these, and I'm so thankful to my father-in-law for taking on that with Joshua. That's been fun. For his foreign language and his science this year, we're doing something a little bit unique because he's being challenged and pushed really far with his humanities and with his math in particular. I wanted to give him this freedom of this sort of last pre-official high school year, although he's actually been doing a lot of high school stuff already, to explore some topics in science that he's interested in. We've done a lot of life science, we've done astronomy, and he had expressed an interest in learning about chemistry and geology and some other topics. And so this year for his science, I just got a bunch of books at our local homeschool store, and he's reading them and doing a reading journal and drawing diagrams in his reading journal, and it's been super fun. So I chose The Disappearing Spoon. So caveat, this is an adult book. It's not for students or for children, so it would be PG-13. My son reads a lot of interesting science and math books in this vein, and is a fairly discerning reader, and so that has been fine for him. But as a caveat, definitely be aware of your own child and their needs. Then these books are his other sources, and I've linked to all of these in the description. We have some by John Hudson Tiner, and some by Answers in Genesis. So he just is reading through these, and by the end of the year, he'll have finished them and have a nice reading journal, nature journal, science journal, and that has been fun. And I've been glad to give him that little bit of freedom this year to explore areas of his interest. With foreign language, I've told all my kids that they have to at least go up through Latin 2, high school Latin 2 level, and then they could choose another Latin, or another language rather. So actually last year, Joshua finished Latin Alive 2 from Classical Academic Press. He took the National Latin Exam 2 exam, he won an award, he finished, and now he got to choose his own language. And I was like, well, why don't you pick like Spanish or something you can talk to other people? And he was like, no, I really want to do Hebrew and Greek and Old English. Okay. Well, I don't think we have time to do all three, so can you just choose one? And he thought and thought. This was back in the summer, and he's like, no, I really want to do all three. So I said, well, how about this? We're going to break it up and do 3 little mini masters. That's what I'm calling them. So 10 weeks per language. We're going to explore it really low key. He's doing this completely independently. I'm not checking in on this at all. And then either he'll find one of these languages that he really, really loves and wants to pursue in high school, or he'll have enjoyed the experience and choose something different for his high school language studies. But I've been thrilled by the free resources that we have found. So my brother is a pastor, and so I asked for his advice, and he shared 2 websites with me, Daily Dose of Greek and Daily Dose of Hebrew. I've linked to those. So my son gets a daily little email that has like a 5-minute video little mini lesson. But then right now he's doing Greek. And so he's going a few times a week and watching these actual like full-length lectures. And in God's providence, we actually had the textbook. I'm always picking up free textbooks. Do you have this problem? We had the textbook that they were using for these free lectures on the shelf. You can see it was like a free thing. And it's been great. It's been so much fun. And I love that he can do that on his own. He's so motivated and really interested in it. So knock himself out. For Old English, a friend lent us this book. He'll use this. And we have a bilingual Beowulf, which is super cool. And I think he's been especially interested in that because of some lectures he heard by Michael Drought. He loves listening to his modern scholar lectures, and Joshua is obsessed with Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. I think that kind of inspired the Old English obsession. That, and I really love Beowulf, so I might have a little something to do with it. But that's what he's doing for foreign language. So foreign language and science are kind of different and unique this year. And it's been fun to see him be interested in that. Wow, I feel like there's probably other things. Let me answer the question about checking in, and it's sort of related to the independence. So both of them I showed you, or here's Joshua's. You know, they have their week at a glance where they have their different subjects, and I can see on there which days they mark off. And of course that's honor system, like I guess you can mark off a day if you haven't done it. But I take very seriously my responsibility to check their work, and you can't expect what you don't inspect. You know, that's a truism for a reason. And I actually have my own check off sheet that I've created, and it's a way for me to visually be reminded, oh, I haven't checked math for, you know, Joshua this week, or it's been a couple days, let me go check his work. It won't necessarily mean that I have time every single day to check every single person's math, but by the end of the week, I will have checked everyone's, checked in. Every week, I'm checking in with my older students. Okay, some weeks, things are really busy, and I'm really trying to prioritize work with my younger students this year. So I may just, they hand me their reading journal, and I just flip through and count the pages. Okay, this is not really a full page. I told you a full page, and this is like 2 inches. So add to that, please. Other days, I'll have them read something out loud to me. Yesterday, I was washing dishes. I needed to make use of my time. I said, okay, Joshua, read to me what reading journal entry you wrote today. So he could read it and we could discuss it. Again, I have things that I'll check in on a monthly basis with them. Make sure I'm discussing reading. These aren't things, again, that I will have time to do every day, but because I have a list for myself, I can come here and be like, oh, wow, it's been a week or two and I haven't talked about what they're reading recently. Okay, I need to make sure that happens. And so this is a way for me to keep up with checking their work. Last year, we tried to have my husband take on the math checking, and that just didn't work out so well because of his schedule. So it's easier this year if I can just keep on top of it little by little and it doesn't back up with several weeks worth of math. But I don't want to get to the end of a week, let alone a month, and be like, oh, so-and-so never did their schoolwork. Like, that's not okay with me. That's not okay. And so it is my duty and my responsibility, if I'm going to take this job on, to take it seriously. And so having my own checklist of work that I need to check has helped maintain some order and accountability for them. Both of them do quite a bit of the work independently on their own, and then they'll come to me and I'm more of a tutor or a mentor. So I'll come and check on let's do the Latin translation or go over it together. I'll check the math, and then if there's a problem area or if while they're doing their work they're having a problem, I'll sit and we'll work through some problems together. But I'm not teaching lessons. They're doing that on their own. Thankfully, they are able to read the chapter and understand it and process that way. That's really a blessing for me. But I am not sitting and teaching, lecturing, anything like that. Once a month, I do a logic discussion with Emma, but she has done the homework on her own ahead of time and comes ready to discuss it with me. Oh, and I didn't mention, my son is doing a writing class outside the home, so with Write Shop 2. So I am not doing any of those, like that's that more formal writing with him. I'm just involved with his reading journal and writing for Humanities and Science. But that has worked well for our relationship, to have the editing being done by someone who's not mom. I'm out of breath. I hope that this was helpful or interesting and you've gotten maybe some good ideas. I think just sometimes seeing that what family X is doing is so different from family Y, and their children are different and unique, and that we have this ability to customize these amazing educations for our children and to let them fly when they have the ability to do amazing and great things. It's such an adventure. I am so thankful for this opportunity to be with my children and to study and learn alongside of them. It's fun to get to revisit some of my own favorite subjects like logic and humanities and philosophy and pre-calculus. And I'm thankful for these two young people, my teen and tween, who the Lord is growing inside and out. And ultimately, that's my top priority, is that the Lord is able to work in our relationship and bind our own hearts together. But most importantly, that my kids would learn to love God with all their heart and mind and soul and strength, and to love their neighbor as themselves. So I will look forward to seeing if anyone has any questions or comments on any of these. If I skipped anything, I tried to at least put stuff in the description. But let me know if there's anything you'd like to hear more about, and I'll talk to you all later.